This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I am your host, Noah Taluki. It's been a long time since we've done a podcast, since week one of the 2023 season. And folks, I'm coming to you now with our Detroit Lions winning their first playoff game since 1991. Folks, I am recording this episode right now about 30 minutes after the end of that 24-23 NFC wildcard round victory over the Los Angeles Rams. And it still hasn't even sunk in, guys. It is incredible what this team has been able to accomplish this season. And I was really excited earlier. And I just sat on my couch for a little bit after the game, and I'm just thinking, did that really just happen? Did our Detroit Lions just win a playoff game, especially against the quarterback that was never able to win a playoff game in Detroit, in Matthew Stafford? I want to go back because this win, this has been a couple years in the making with this regime. I want to take you back to June of 2020. That's when we first did our first episode of Open Mic Night, when I was going in my senior year of college. And one of the things I talked about that week that had happened was Sheila Hamp Ford officially became the owner of the Lions. She took it over from her mother, Martha. And I remember talking on the podcast, that first episode I ever did, about how I think this is going to lead to change. And I think 4 years ago, if you were to say that Sheila Hamp Ford buying the team would lead to a Lions playoff victory 4 years later, I think a lot of people would think I'm nuts. And I never said any of that stuff that it was going to lead to a playoff win, but I think I said I think there's going to be stability. I remember saying Sheila is not like her parents. I think Sheila was very driven, and she did not want to be like her parents. She set this organization on 4 key principles: collaboration, telling the truth, being yourself, and loving football. What did she do after that? She hired Brad Holmes in her first full season as owner. First full calendar year, I should say. Go out and hire Brad Holmes, an excellent talent evaluator. Who does he draft? He drafts a lot of the key pieces to this Lions team. We'll get into the game a little bit later. Who does Holmes hire? A culture guy in Dan Campbell. A guy that's not afraid to be himself, that loves football, that was a player in Detroit. He gets the heartbreak. He understands how the fans feel. And his quarterback is Jared Goff, who the Rams paid a hefty ransom in a trade for Matthew Stafford. They ended up getting all this draft capital in return. These are the players they got: Melifonwu, EP2 Melifonwu, Jameson Williams, Josh Paschal, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Broderick Martin. Most of those guys were key contributors in this game tonight for the Lions. I'm telling you, this is why I'm backtracking. This is why I'm going back 3 or 4 years. Because that stuff that happened a few years ago is everything that led up to this point in this game. And all you think, if anyone's listening out there that was at the game, I hope you took it all in. We've been waiting 32 years of our lives for this. 32. Most teams have it a lot better than us when it comes to playoff success. But this was our night. There was no way the Rams were going to come in here and get bullied around by the Lions. There was no way. And the Rams were being physical. Puka Nacua, 9 catches, 182 yards. He had himself the best rookie receiving performance in NFL history in a playoff game. He was tough. He was making tough catches. He was blocking on the perimeter. It was a little bit of a dogfight. It was a shootout to begin the game, and then by the time the second half rolled around, it kind of leveled out. Man, 2 former number 1 overall picks going after it at quarterback. 2 guys that were traded for each other. And all the attention this week was on Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford's going to come in Ford Field. He's going to light it up. We don't want any Matthew Stafford jerseys at Ford Field. Ban Matthew Stafford. Screw his wife, Kelly, and the kids and all this other BS crap. Nobody was talking about Jared Goff. Nobody was talking about how him and Josh Reynolds are going up his former team against their former team, the team that gave up on them. All the attention went to Stafford. Nobody was talking about how fired up Jared Goff was deep down, probably, and him and Josh Reynolds, and really this entire team. Look what happens when a culture is in place. Look what happens when players believe in each other. When you draft talented players. This is what it turns into. This is the fruition of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes' fruits of their labor, at least for right now. The number 1 would be a Super Bowl. That would be the absolute pinnacle. But the fruits of their labor are starting to pan out. A little bit more on the game, too. Before the game, okay, you fans booing Matthew Stafford, enough. Guys, Matthew gave it all for this town. I know he didn't give us a playoff win, but to boo him after all those years, after the Detroit Rams, after cheering him on so hard 2 years ago, he comes out and he gets booed. Guys, I didn't like that. I didn't like how Stafford got booed. We are classier Detroit fans than that. Now, we weren't going to cheer for him that day. But we didn't want the Rams to win, did we? I just thought that was a little disrespectful before the game. But I digress. There's a lot more fun stuff to talk about. The offense was really clicking to begin. I mean, run after run, pass after pass. Dan Campbell gambles. He goes for it on 4th down. It ends up paying off. Look at how aggressive Dan Campbell's been his entire coaching career here in Detroit. And there's been questions. Oh, why did he go for it? Why did they fake this punt? Why did he go for it here, way deep in his own territory? What? They went for it on 4th down at the 1. They got it to Sam Laporta, who's hobbling on his knee out there. Probably in a regular season week, he probably is not playing the playoffs. He's got to get that thing, get a brace on. Let's go. He catches the touchdown. That play ultimately put the Lions, when you think about it, 24-23, if they kick a field goal there, they lose the game. Another player from the Stafford trade, Sam Laporta. That offense was clicking. It was a shootout. I mean, Stafford was even going after it. And then the defense started getting on Stafford. You saw that bloodied finger on the broadcast. You saw he hit his head really hard on the turf when Aleem McNeil came in and hit him in the head. He was playing banged up. And you know what? I'm watching that. I'm like, Stafford's not coming out of this game. They're showing Carson Wentz looking at the plays. That's just, Carson's not playing. Stafford's coming. He's going out there. There is no way Stafford's coming out of that game. We've seen it all too much in Detroit. And at the end of that game, I got to admit, a little doubt creeped into me. Because I said, man, the Rams are close. They're in field goal range. And what happened? A call actually benefited the Lions. It was a holding call on Rob Havenstein, the right tackle for the Rams, on Aiden Hutchinson. That pushed that was a 10-yard penalty. It pushed him out of field goal range. Then Stafford throws up a jump ball to Puka Nacua, who I knew the whole time it was going to Puka. I saw Hutchinson on a wide 9 technique, and Puka was like a couple steps outside of him. And I remember being like, What if can Aiden just get like a little tug on him before he goes and pass rushes? I don't want Puka getting a free release. And because I was like, I know that ball's going to him. And, there was maybe a little tug of a jersey and all that, but it's playoff football, guys. They're not calling the ticky-tacky stuff. And there were very few ticky-tacky calls. I thought overall it was a good officiating game, minus that one really bad penalty that was in the first half that escapes me. It was when the Rams defender jumped off sides, and then they called it on Taylor Decker when it really should have been on the Rams. That was like the only questionable call. So there's nothing to blame the refs on for this game. This is no Dallas game in 2014 when we're blaming refs or this happened or the Dallas game a couple weeks ago. No, none of that happened. There is no more excuses. Same old Lions is buried forever. The culmination of SOL. Yeah, there were steps in it. Winning the division, hosting a home play, but winning that playoff game, that's when I think SOL, it's gone for good. First win in the playoffs since 1991. Just incredible. There were some other key plays in this game. How about the defense holding in the red zone? Stafford was having his day out there. He was picking apart the Lions. He was throwing those no-look passes, weird sidearm throws. He was getting it to Kupp. He was getting it to Puka. Tutu Atwell had a great game. But what they do in the red zone? They were 0 for 3 in red zone touchdowns. They had to settle for field goals. What's the classic line in the NFL? You're not going to get it done with 3 points. You got to get 7. You got to score touchdowns. The Lions held in the red zone when they needed to. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was breaking up a Cooper Kupp pass on third down that forced a field goal. That was one of the biggest plays of the game, I thought. How about Michael Badgley? Michael Badgley, we've known this. He's been money from inside 50. He's been bad out 50 plus. And what did that guy do on a 54-yard field goal? He was the broadcast showed it, 6 for 14 on attempts over 50 yards. What does he do? He bangs it, nails it right down the middle. It's the little plays like that. If he misses that field goal, Rams win. Those little plays that the Lions never seemed to make back then. They never seemed to make those plays. It was always an excuse. They were always unraveling. Everything went their way with that stuff. The field goal, the call at the end of the game, the holding on Havenstein on Hutchinson. All that stuff went their way. I cannot be more proud of this team and what Dan Campbell has built than what I've had tonight as a Lions fan. I got 24 texts from people, guys. I was trying to go home from Baltimore. I was just here in my apartment watching it, but my family was FaceTiming me, friends FaceTiming me, 24 texts. This just means a lot to us. And, even though I couldn't be at home, it was still just really cool to watch it and getting texts from my friends and all the people that were at that game. Matt Derry, big shout out to him, Locked On Lions podcast, texting him throughout today. I was even texting with Corey Schlesinger, former Lion, greatest fullback in Lions history on the Lions all-time team, a former player that understands the playoff drought. He said, he texted me, he said, look what happens when you get a guy that drafts talented players and has guys, a culture and players that believe in one another. There's no excuses. This is the most complete Lions team I've ever seen in my lifetime. We have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. We have a run game. Jared Goff can pick apart defenses, multiple receivers. Khalif Raymond was out. No problem. Sam Laporta playing hurt. No problem. He still made a good catch. 3 great catches. Tough catches, too. Amon-Ra St. Brown got going in space. He was probably banged up because he hurt his ribs last week against the Vikings. Dan Campbell is not afraid to be himself. His players know that. That was the whole thing with the injuries from last week. But those guys went out there and showed all of Detroit and the world, that this is a new Lions team. The SOL is gone forever. This is what happens when you get a whole new culture in there that says, we're turning this thing around. This isn't just talk like it used to be. These guys actually believe that it's going to happen, and it did. It goes back to what I started out at the beginning. It all starts from the top. With Sheila and what she's created with Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell. This team, you fans deserve to celebrate. I will be celebrating. I did earlier, but I mean, we did it. It still hasn't set in, like I said at the beginning. It's just incredible. Just incredible what this team has been able to do. And throughout my whole lifetime, it's my memories. It just made me think to when I first fell in love with the NFL, which is when Stafford hurt his shoulder against the Browns and then threw the game-winning touchdown after he hurt his shoulder, and just always thinking like, man, he's going to deliver us a playoff win. It never happened. And then this new Lions team. I remember everyone's like, oh, Jared Goff's just a bridge quarterback. He's not the guy to take the Lions to the playoffs. There was so much doubt about Jared Goff. But I think what people forget is that Jared has a deep drive and determination that no one sees. He lost the Super Bowl with the Rams. I don't know if he was really ever Sean McVay's number one guy. And he's proven the doubters wrong. And now the party's even going to be more in Detroit. Lions are hosting a divisional playoff game. They're hosting 2 playoff games in a row. They're guaranteed since the Packers killed the fake Cowboys today. Boy, what a game that was. Blowout by the red hot Packers. It's guaranteed the Lions are going to face the winner of Philly versus Tampa Bay. I think that's a very winnable game either way. Guys, the Lions could be in the NFC Championship. Think about that. It's one game at a time, but I'll take the Lions any day over Tampa and Philly. I gotta watch that game tomorrow. I gotta see what's up, but I like the Lions' chances this year. Man, how about a Lions-Ravens Super Bowl? That'd be really interesting. Of course, me working for the Ravens, and wow, never know. But just overall, defense really held when it needed to. Rams 0 for 3 with touchdowns in the red zone, had to settle for field goals. Lions offense did just enough in the first half. They stalled in the second half, but they did what they needed to do on the ground. And, especially at the end, it was just a really good all-around effort, kicking game, just all around. Savor this, Lions fans. We've waited way too long for this. Think about how different the world was in 1991 when we last won a playoff game. There were no cell phones. People were still reading newspapers. I was probably picking up Wojo's column in the Detroit News. Next morning, there's the newspaper. Oh, beat Dallas 38-6 or whatever the score was. WDFN The Fan was at its prime. AM radio. Matt Derry was still in college, I believe, at Syracuse. Savor this moment, Lions fans. Really happy I was able to share my Lions thoughts with all of you folks. Check out, the rest of Detroit Sports Podcast and what Adam and Doc the Jock, Strozinski and all Adam Strozinski, their Doc and Jock podcast, I should say, with John Macaroon. I'm sure John is getting all the content in the world at the Lions game tonight, but savor this one, folks. Savor it. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in. Hopefully, I get to do an episode next week with hopefully a divisional win, either over Tampa or Philly. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in. You're listening to Open Mic Night.